Hello everyone, it's Jess Conto, your Wasteland Reviewer, and welcome to the Wasteland, my weekly show where I take a deep dive into a particular film. And this week, taking a dive into yet another John Ford film, of course. We're in the mid-1930s, and we'll be talking about The World Moves On. And joining me this week is my wife, Jess. Jess, thank you so much for coming on.
You're welcome.
She's very excited to talk about this John Ford film, I can guarantee it.
So excited.
But for those who haven't tuned into the show before, we have 3 segments. We're going to start with coming attractions for December 8th. Then we're going to take a dive into our feature film and then give you some recommendations to leave with. Because to be honest, I don't think you'll be leaving with a recommendation after we talk about our feature film. But starting with coming attractions, this week was only supposed to have one wide release, and that is a new Studio Ghibli Miyazaki film. And then they randomly threw in another thriller starring Tobin Bell. But to be honest, Jess, what are you most excited about?
Definitely The Boy and the Heron, Shane.
There you go. Why?
It's a Miyazaki film. And Studio Ghibli.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot that needs to be said at that point.
That's
it's just like...
There's my recommendation.
He's back out of retirement.
Yeah, he already said that this is going to be... I think I read something that said that he's already back out of retirement.
Okay. But this is his latest film, and I've heard nothing but great things about it so far from people who have seen it. And, you know, there's a pretty high level of quality when it comes to Miyazaki's films, so I'm also very excited for it. I did want to put, though, with a limited release, we have Poor Things from Yorgos Lanthimos, which is his new female-centric Frankenstein reimagining, starring Emma Stone and a bunch of hammy performances from a lot of people, including Mark Ruffalo and Willem Dafoe as the Frankenstein scientist character, and of course Mark Ruffalo as just what looks like the douchiest man alive with the douchiest mustache and the biggest man baby freakouts I've seen in a movie just from the trailers, and
we can only hope.
It looks like it's absolutely inventive, very Terry Gilliam-esque, and seems very hilarious. So I'm very much looking forward to that, even though it doesn't actually come out everywhere until December 22nd, so still gotta wait a few more weeks. But those are indeed coming attractions. Relatively light start to the month, and then, you know, it turns into December and there's tons and tons and tons of releases. But getting to our feature film, The World Moves On. This, from John Ford from 1934, was actually the first Hollywood Code-approved film. Good for them.
That's why it's boring.
There you go. The Hays Code just ruining everything.
I mean, it did ruin a lot, arguably.
There you go.
Stymied art.
This is starring Madeleine Carroll and Franchot Tone. I'm not French, nor do I speak French.
Franchot-tone.
Franchot,
I guess.
Franchot. And they had a lot of World War I footage towards the end of this film that was actually taken from wooden crosses.
Oh, that was the most interesting part.
We'll get to the ending. But let's get started. Jess, what stood out to you the most? What are your general thoughts about The World Moves On?
Boy, my general thoughts are, if I were a 1930s dude trying to take a girl to the pictures to make out with her, because, you know, I didn't really care about the movie, I'd probably take her to this, so...
There you go.
It's a good necking film.
Because this is a full hour and 45-minute feature film, which John Ford didn't have a ton up to this point that went over an hour and 30 minutes. And it's very sluggish. It feels very overlong. It honestly feels like threading together a bunch of vignettes together and very loosely tied together based off of this journey of 2 rich families and rich people problems.
Yeah, not very relatable.
And this couple, played by Tone and Carol, and not gonna lie, towards the beginning of the film, I'm like, okay, they have some pretty good chemistry. There's definitely a few big emotional moments as well towards the end of the film where, you know, their marriage isn't going the greatest, and, you know, trying to figure things out, especially because Tone's character kind of turns into a rich D-bag, and you're just like, I don't care about you anymore. But I really feel like this film is supposed to be looking at humanity and relationships and how the world can shape us and our relationships with other people in sometimes not the best ways, and, you know, humanity trying to overcome that adversity. It just didn't tell it in the most interesting way. But I feel like that's the vibe I was getting.
Mm-hmm.
Was that the kind of vibe you were getting about this film?
Yeah, I was just kind of bored until it got to the World War I footage, and I'm like, wow, interesting, creative shots.
It
took a little bit to get to the old timey racism, but rest assured, it's in there.
Yes, every black character is a caricature and comic relief in this film.
Because that's what we needed in a melodramatic war film.
And they had to loop that character back around towards the end.
God forbid we let Dixie go.
Had to have that comic relief in, like, the last scene of the movie.
Yeah, it's like in the middle of a battle, isn't it? And I'm just like...
It was very ill-timed comic relief and also pretty offensive comic relief.
Yeah, it wasn't very funny.
It's a very big globe-trotting film, bouncing around between all these different people in all different places around the world. I do feel like the war film part of it is the most interesting and dynamic and impactful in terms of they're like exploding actual buildings and stuff like that. It's just like, wow, they put some serious money into this. This wharf scenes actually felt visceral and intense, which is a big change of pace from the rest of the film that feels very not intense or engaging or interesting in any way, shape, or form. It was actually a struggle to get through a lot of this film, which is really disappointing because there's some films in this era from John Ford that are pretty well known, and honestly, just a couple years later, he's going to have Stagecoach. Like, we're almost up to that point. It'll take a few more months, but we'll get there.
Dawn of the Western.
But I think this really does hit on some of that unfortunate truth of, like, after years and years and years of being together, maybe that person isn't the same exact person that they were when you first got together, and maybe you're not the best fit anymore. I just feel like the Carol's character looked dead inside, interacting with Tone's character by the end of this film, until she finally, like, lashed out at him and just been like, "Why are you a dick now?" And obviously ad-libbed. That was an ad-lib. It wasn't exactly how that went down.
I wish.
But I have to say... Actually, Jess, do you have any other thoughts before I talk about the ending of this movie?
No.
So, they did a preview to World War II at the end of this movie.
Yeah.
They show a bunch of footage. Like, this came out in 1934. This is fresh-ass footage of Mussolini and Hitler. And it's just like... They basically just took these newsreels and threw them right into the film.
Yeah.
And then the movie ends on a giant crucifix with heavenly glow behind it. And I'm just like...
Yeah, I thought that was interesting, because I'm like, did I have a stroke? Is this something else? Like, is this a different movie?
I'm like... I feel like by the end, it was just like, this movie was bigger than any character in the movie. Then why did we spend an hour and 40 minutes with them? And in the end, I just felt like this film was trying to hit too broad of strokes and too broad in terms of looking at humanity, and just didn't really deliver on it. So in the end, yeah, I wasn't the biggest fan of this movie and I was kind of bored.
The world did move on to another World War, sadly.
Indeed. And we're moving on to recommendations to things that we actually would recommend for you to watch, if you agree.
Yeah.
So... moving along. So, Jess, what would you like to recommend to all of our wonderful viewers?
I'd love to recommend Bass Reeves. I'm enjoying it, and as far as I can remember, it's pretty accurate. I mean, he lived a hell of a life. He was a really extraordinary person, and it's cool to see that brought to life in a way that I think, I'm not a historian, but seems to be pretty historically accurate.
Yeah, Lawman Bass Reeves from Taylor Sheridan, expanding the Yellowstone verse.
I mean, this really happened.
Well, yeah.
But I guess it could have happened in the Yellowstone universe, too.
It's just very interesting. This feels so very different to the rest of his shows, and, like, Bass Reeves is such a fascinating lead character, and David Oyelowo is
depth.
doing such a good job bringing him to life. And then you just have the supporting cast of Shea Wingham and Barry Pepper and Dennis Quaid and Donald Sutherland. So, like, there's a lot of interesting character actors popping up in this film, in this series, and we're up to date as of recording, so 5 episodes in out of 8, so it's almost done, but it definitely adds, like, the emotional depth of, like, dealing with his family stuff and trying to balance, you know, his lawman stuff that he's just totally rad at.
Well, and all those, like, fun facts that I mean, I'm not going to put quotes, they are fun facts about him, like, not being able to read, him being ambidextrous, you know, they kind of introduce those in a way that I'm on the couch pointing out to Shane, I'm like, you know, he really was ambidextrous. That's basically me. I was like, look, he's shooting with both hands.
Yep.
Dual wielding.
Just pulled a Leo from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
I do it. One of my hyperfixations was the West in general.
So it works out.
Yeah.
So this show really works out for Jess.
Sometimes my brain retains information, but only if it's a fixation.
And I do have my full 3 recommendations for this episode. My first one for a new release is Napoleon. Does this feel like this movie had a bunch of stuff cut out despite being 2 hours and 38 minutes? Yes.
True.
Do I think that the 4-hour cut's probably the most full version of this movie? Probably. Were they ever going to release it in theaters? No. Will I watch it on Apple TV Plus? Probably. I might choose to break it into pieces.
They get a mini-series, why not?
Well, that's the benefit of, you know, just on streaming anyway.
I'm very offended they left off the accent aigu.
It is
title.
It is very weird and horny.
Yeah.
Biopic. And Joaquin Phoenix plays an amazing baby man-child who lashes out in the most petty of ways, but also military genius, and certainly rose to the top. Cream rose to the top. You're welcome. I knew Jess would appreciate that reference.
As soon as he's gonna say that, he's gonna do the Macho Man. He did. The prophecy fulfilled.
Cream of the crop. Yeah.
You missed the part where he keeps hucking creamers into other guy.
At Mean Gene.
He just keeps.
But yeah, Napoleon and Vanessa Kirby. They could have done so much more with Josephine, but like Vanessa Kirby was great. Next up, well, probably a lot of her stuff's on the cutting room floor that we'll get in the 4-hour cut. Next up is a film off my watch list, which is Better Days. So this was a Hong Kong film, only the 3rd Hong Kong film ever nominated for Best International Film at the Oscars. And this film is messed up, deeply emotional, impactful, and shocking. And will definitely take you on a ride. And moral of the story is, bullying is bad.
Bullying bad.
Bullying is indeed bad.
Bold statement, Shane.
Bold statement by the film. And then finally, a rewatch of ours, which Jess and I are going to be doing the Wasteland Rewind for the Scribe podcast, is Airplane. Because laugh every 5 seconds. Because there's jokes every 5 seconds.
I mean, most of them are still pretty funny.
And like 99% of them are hilarious, and like 50% of them are messed up. Oh my god, they went to some places with some of these
Starting
jokes.
in the first scene with the announcers.
You're just mad at me because you want me to have an abortion.
Yeah.
I'm just like, what?
Don't start with your white zone shit.
Oh my god, this movie's ridiculous, and like the 2 leads are the 2 least interesting.
But I think that's on purpose.
But like having Leslie Nielsen as the doctor, it's just like, I am serious and don't call me Shirley. And
He plays everything straight.
good luck. We're all counting on you. And Robert Stack who just starts beating people up the second he shows up at the airport.
Don't forget Jonathan.
And then the best, Lloyd Bridges.
Jonathan, the guy in the control room. He just keeps coming up
It's
with
getting
random
larger!
What kind of plane is it? Well, it looks like a giant Tylenol pill. It's red and white.
He's the most random character in the movie.
Very relatable.
And absolutely hilarious. But no, the running joke of like, picked the wrong week to give up drinking, picked the wrong week to give up smoking, picked the wrong week to give up amphetamines, picked the wrong week to give up snorting glue, sniffing glue. Oh my god. Airplane's hilarious and you should watch it. How does it work? I don't know. Somehow it does.
It's just funny.
Now I'm just thinking of the little girls like, oh, I like my coffee
God.
black, like how I like my men. Just look at this little girl
boy next to her.
who's definitely flirting with her and then couldn't understand.
He has such a genuine look of confusion on his face.
I would imagine.
Yeah, I don't think the kid really got the joke,
But yes, definitely watch Airplane. If you're going to pick any of them, watch Airplane. Because then you'll have a good time for an hour and 27 minutes. But that is a wrap. And that is another episode of Welcome to the Wasteland. Jess, thank you so much for always coming on and humoring me by talking about these John Ford movies.
it's a pleasure, Shane.
And thank all of you out there for always tuning in and supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.